The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
Hey, it's me, and welcome to TMHQ Trump Mafia. Now, the reason YouTube is designated this channel as trouble is because it's pro-Trump, and also it's trouble for them, because I tell the inconvenient truth, right? As you can see, the media all sounding like Baghdad Bob, and even UK Intel, even our CIA, even our Pentagon, they're coming out with fairy tales. Russia is winning. It's not even close, and it's pretty easy for them, and you can tell by the giant map room that they have there that they are on schedule, and whatever little narratives you see out there, it's almost childish. You know, I always feel like if you have a war situation, you have to be factual, and that's why you realize that we're in big trouble if all we have is a bunch of fairy tales and all this shrieking about how Russia's losing when they're clearly winning. Then we're defeating the purpose of propaganda. Propaganda should be believable. But I have to add that I'm not even on the Russian side. I just feel like we have no business in Ukraine at all. And we have been provoking Russia. While we have an open border, again, caused by Biden, we have a crime wave, inflation, soaring gas prices, and Americans are dying all over the place. And Biden thinks he's the president of Ukraine. Yeah, he cares about the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian border, but he doesn't care about American people and the American border. And he sanctioned America before he even sanctioned Russia as well. So what's up with this clown and all of his mistakes and his idiocy? You know, this guy could actually start World War III because he's so stupid and senile, and nobody's stopping the guy. I mean, just the other day, he told the 82nd, hey, you're going to be in Ukraine soon. So, of course, Russia comes out and says, hey, the American military wants to move into Ukraine. Yeah. So you either admit that Biden is senile and stupid and shouldn't be president, certainly not commander-in-chief, or you correct him, and that's what they're doing. But if you have to keep on correcting a president, then you're de facto admitting that he's senile and stupid. And that tells you that the media doesn't even care about our national security at all. But these are the same people that have been attacking a sitting U.S. president, President Trump, and trying to sabotage his every move, even during high-level negotiations with North Korea or other major countries like China. And they're rooting for Europe. I don't know how to explain that this leading from behind really is all about taking down the USA a couple of notches, right? That's what the Europeans want. And you see Joe Biden over there in Europe, and he's so happy with his fake teeth, smiling all the time, and his bum leg, dragging it. And they're all so friendly, right? Oh, Joey. They're all so happy. Why? Because they see Joe Biden as a walking ATM. And that is because he's, handing out billions of dollars, even for Ukrainian refugees. And again, we have a broken DOJ, a broken DOD, a broken DHS. We have an open border. We have a crime wave, and this guy is handing out billions for Ukrainians. I mean, that's silly. And for what? For chaos they created, not Russia. Russia is a country that understands that someone, somewhere, some alliance will always try to invade them. And what's the choice, right? You allow these vultures to come in and pillage your nation, as they did in Ukraine, and turn it into a giant money laundering operation, or you stand up for Russia and you defend Russia. And so we already had NATO bases inside of Ukraine, and that's why I guess Joe Biden made that mistake, kind of admitting something like that, or saying that those troops will be in the west of Ukraine again. But how many times can you poke a bear before you get mauled? And Ukraine also made a critical error in helping us and NATO to provoke Russia. And that's not the fault of the Ukrainian people. I really feel bad for these people. But we also have to admit it's because of the Ukrainian leadership and the Nazi battalions that also wanted this war. But I guess, you have to be careful what you wish for, because the Russians are winning this thing. It's not even close. And what their true objective is may be related to what they actually said, to demilitarize Ukraine. And if you look at the facts, they have depleted the Ukrainian army, not so much in terms of personnel, just 30,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers. But in terms of their systems, air defense, the Air Force, Navy, they're all almost ceasing to exist. I mean, we're talking about 10 planes now instead of 120. We're talking about their S-300s completely destroyed. And when you look at tanks, 65% of all of their tanks and armored vehicles are gone. Yeah, in 1 month, 65%. And you go down the list, all their warehouses, ammo depots, all their military buildings and systems, gone, gone, gone. And so it really is about demilitarizing Ukraine, but somehow they're being gentle. They said they're not going into the big cities because a lot of civilians would die. Obviously, they don't want the Ukrainian people to die, so they're going out of their way. But I believe that the Ukrainian army is holed up in cities because they know that. And at the same time, they hope that the Russians will move into the cities to drag out this war for years. But of course, Putin is a student of history. He's not going to do that. But it goes to show that it seems that our side is not interested in helping Ukraine regain their country. They're only interested in bothering Russia. And it's basically pestering, because all that military aid, it's like throwing money and weapons into a black hole. It's not going to affect any outcome. And even the sanctions don't kick in until June. So you still have 2 months where Russia can do what it wants. And besides that, the sanctions are backfiring on Europe and on us in such a big way that it's embarrassing. And the major countries out there in terms of population, China, Brazil, India, they're not even going along with sanctioning Russia. You have NATO members like Hungary and Turkey that are not sanctioning Russia. You have Europeans still buying Russian energy. They're not sanctioning Russia on that. And you have a lot of corporations, of course, canceling Russia. We're moving out, which is a defeat of capitalism, of their brands. They're the ones that are the losers, really. Not in terms of money so much, even though, of course, it's a big market, but in terms of reputation, right? You have Disney pulling out. But what is Disney, really? If you look at Florida, they're promoting the grooming of little children, toddlers, all the way up to 3rd grade, to teach them about sexuality and LGBTQ and all of that. And all their employees are angry that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, comes out with that. So what kind of a company are we talking about here? So if Disney leaves Russia, Russia's like, thanks. Or Netflix leaves Russia, they're like, thanks. And you can say that about a lot of these corporations, because in the past, Pepsi going into the Soviet Union, that was a big deal. Or Levi's, all of these corporations, because with it comes an understanding that it's about freedom of speech. It's about capitalism, not communism. But nowadays, these corporations are exporting LGBTQ and P, and they're exporting woke culture, cancel culture. And Russia doesn't want that. In fact, many countries don't want that. It's almost like force feeding an LGBTQ agenda on all of these countries overseas. And you saw the State Department flying the rainbow flag outside of U.S. embassies. It's so embarrassing. And then not to mention the trans culture. And what a far cry, right? From the past, we're really the good side, right? We're promoting freedom of speech all over the world and individual freedoms. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And that's one of the things Ronald Reagan stood for. And that's also what President Trump stands for. But this regime and the EU and NATO, we're talking about fascists. And these corporations are about, okay, we're going to cancel you if you don't agree to our radical left agenda. That's the opposite of what happened in the past. Instead of exporting freedom, you're demanding compliance. And that is the giant difference here. I don't feel like we're the good side because, first of all, we're not securing our own border. Second of all, we have many problems at home that have to be solved, and that needs money. And this Biden regime is sending all its money to Europe and to Ukraine, throwing it into a dark black hole. Nobody even knows where that money ends up. And if you look at these Democrat politicians, I mean, they're looting our treasury. Trillions and trillions and trillions. It never stops. And the reason is they actually want to bankrupt our country. It's called leading from behind. Because in a global new world order, the USA is invited, but not if it's too strong, because then it would become an American empire. And that's not what they want. And so they're looking for parity. So it means that the USA has to be diminished in terms of GDP, in terms of the military, and that way they can play in the NWO. And Russia, they're not invited, bro, because they're too nationalist. They don't want the LGBTQ agenda. They don't want the migrant streams and all of that. And they certainly don't want to be pillaged by the Clintons and the Bidens and the Obamas. They want to be their own country, and Russians want to be Russians. And so it seems to me like NATO is basically an expansionist military alliance that doesn't have a function except to be belligerent. And it used to be a military alliance because, yeah, the Soviet Union occupied half of Europe, all the way up to Germany, and it was a danger, right? So you create a military alliance, a balance of power. But since the Soviet Union fell, you have a Russian Federation, all of Eastern Europe is free. Then why would you expand NATO into those countries? I mean, you're saying, okay, the Soviet Union lost, and that means we're going to become the empire now. And that's wrong. And everybody with common sense knows that. But if you look at our military, I talked about this, obviously, I have a minority view on the internet because everything is suppressed or censored. But the truth of our side is that we're not the good side here. And yeah, they can kind of use the porn of refugees and poor Ukrainian people. Even I feel bad for Ukrainian people on a human level. But are we going to talk about geopolitics or not? And if you look at geopolitics, it's really the history that Europe has always created alliances to invade lands far away, whether it's the British Empire or the French, or even going way back to Alexander the Great, the Romans. It's kind of their thing, right? And they use us, kind of like the big kid in the gang, right? And if you get into trouble, then You call the big USA, right? Come and help us. And they're hiding behind us. We always have to fight their wars now. And so Russia has always been at the receiving end of many of these invasions. The Crimean War, for example, in the 1850s. I mean, that involved an alliance of Germany and France and Turkey. And, you know, Russians are used to it. So now they have somebody who's standing up to an alliance. And Russian people like that. The problem is that it seems like our media, you know, they're buffoons. The other day I saw Mark Levin showing a clip of David Petraeus talking to Jake Tapper on CNN, standing in front of a map, explaining things. And it was so dumb. And not just dumb because they're dumbing it down for the CNN audience, but dumb in even the arguments that David Petraeus was making. So I realized this guy's an idiot. Just like President Trump revealed that Mattis was an idiot, Mark Milley Cyrus is an idiot, and I myself deducted that the worst CENTCOM commander, now Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, is ultra dumb. But David Petraeus, you know, he was in the CIA, and then, of course, you know what he did in Afghanistan. There's a reason why we were there, failing for so long. It's because, turns out, he's an idiot. He's not some kind of a military genius. He's a complete idiot. And I was really shocked, to be honest. You know, like Stanley McChrystal, I knew that guy was kind of like a dopey idiot. And General McMaster, you know, all of these people from the past, you know, some of them were good, some of them were average. But it seems like the dumb ones really got promoted. And David Petraeus, wasn't that a guy who had a mistress and he gave her classified information, something like that? Anyway, this guy's really dumb because some of the things he was telling Jake Tapper is so detached from reality. It was so childish, and the arguments didn't even make sense. You know, he was making assumptions about what the Russians were doing, like they're digging their tanks. That means they took so many losses, they're scared and they want to dig in. But that doesn't mean that they're scared or that it's because of any losses, because it's not even true. You know, what if they don't want to go into the big cities, so they're just kind of creating a siege. So you hold, so you dig in, right? You're not going to put your tanks out there in the open so that anybody with, you know, some kind of a weapon can take out a tank. You're going to dig in. You never know. It could be artillery or something else. But that doesn't mean that you somehow were losing or you're scared. I mean, this is just idiocy coming from David Petraeus. But that's just one little example. He said many more stupid things. And you will actually lose brain cells. I have it up at TMHQ, Trump Mafia on Patreon. And, you know, some of you made members, you heard it. And you realize David Petraeus is an idiot, a real idiot. And that's what we have, you know, in the media also. You have all these so-called experts, and they're repeating narratives that somebody gave them or they saw on another show. And it's all bogus information. They're telling fairy tales. And so I'm here to tell you the truth. That is, in just 1 month, Russia accomplished almost everything already in terms of demilitarizing Ukraine, going after the Ukrainian army infrastructure and their equipment and their weapons. And they're succeeding. You know, if you kind of generalize it all, they kind of depleted the Ukrainian army by 70% in terms of equipment, weapons, depots, all of that. And in terms of personnel, kind of like 10%, 11%. And that also shows you that they're not trying to kill people per se. They're more interested in destroying the infrastructure of the military. And they also want to occupy and control the two republics. And who knows if they really want to capture Odessa or they want to create a land bridge from Crimea to the republics. That could be why you see on this map that, they really focused on the south and the east. But they said they're going into phase 2 now after 1 month. So the first month was phase 1. It's kind of like how we, in the Persian Gulf War, we had Desert Shield, and then it changed into Desert Storm. And so it'll be like that. So I don't know if the second phase will be better or worse for Ukraine. But I feel like if they can capture the 2 republics, then that's really the main thing they want, right? Is to have those 2 republics, to have Crimea, to have Ukraine recognize it, to have Ukraine never to join NATO, and for Ukraine to be like a neutral zone. And if Putin can walk away with that, it's a big win. But I feel like our side, we don't want it. We want this war to be lasting for decades. I mean, that's the idea. They're using the Afghanistan playbook where Russians are sucked in. But, we're talking about 2022. This is not 1979 or 1980. And even though we were sucked into Afghanistan for decades and spent trillions there, that doesn't mean Russia's going to do that. Again, we're kind of projecting everything we think or feel or decide onto them. And that's why you lose brain cells when you hear these people telling fairy tales in the media. And the Russians were driven back. Against all odds, the Ukrainians pushed back the evil Russians, and the Ukrainian Top Guns destroyed all the MiGs, and it's all not true. It's all not true is what I'm saying. But even if you don't know what the truth is, all you have to do is look at the map. That is after just 1 month. I mean, that's like, I don't want to use this example because I don't want you to think that Russia's going to ever attack the USA. But to compare, I mean, imagine we're invaded by country X, and within 1 month, they occupy the whole east coast of our nation. How would you feel? Like they're losing? I don't think so, right? 1 month? But yet that is what is happening. But okay, it's Ukraine, it's the poorest country in Europe, and the Ukrainian leadership are basically CIA puppets, a lot of corrupted politicians that are bought, and they're marching to the drum of the CIA. And they realize that in the end, when Russia gets even more of a victory there, then you have the next 6 months of people saying, what happened? How did we get it so wrong? And I'm here to say, well, they're getting it wrong every day on purpose. And so they're doing that on purpose. The way they talk about the Russians losing and being demoralized and all of that, it's kind of like the Russia hoax or climate change or, whatever stories they come up with. Remember, all of these intel people said the Hunter laptop was Russian disinformation. All of these people, including Biden just recently, always talking about the Charlottesville hoax and keep on repeating lies, right? Even for years. And why is that? Because they want you not to accept reality. They want you to believe that, people are not who they are. They want you to believe that the election was like this and like that. Even if everything is kind of hitting at you, that you're being lied to, somehow they feel like if they keep on repeating it, that the population will just accept lies as being the truth and the truth as being lies. It's Orwellian. I mean, this is what George Orwell warned about. It's like the opposite is true, right? And they condition us that we suddenly just believe fairy tales and we don't believe our lying eyes. And I'm here to say I'm one of those people that says, wake up, look at the map. Russia is easily winning. It's not even close. And that's all. Doesn't mean I'm pro-Russia, but it means I'm pro-reality. And in war, really, if you want to win or you want to understand your enemy, maybe it's a good idea to start dealing in facts and reality and to know what's what and what the real facts are on the ground and not make up stuff, because you're not going to win wars in the future if you deny reality, right? And that is, in essence, why some great armies lost. In the beginning, they were all about facts. And then they were like, oh, we're the best. And, oh, they're mounting a counterattack. It doesn't matter. And in the end, you get defeated, right? So Russia's not going to make this mistake. They're so methodical. And I see all the updates. I realize that they're not hoping, they're not dreaming, fantasizing. They're very pragmatic. And I don't really know if the Russians right now are anything similar to the Soviets of the past. It really does seem like they have a different frame of mind. They're more surgical, methodical, and they really understand what they're doing. And so they're not following some grand scheme to conquer Europe or to conquer Ukraine. Maybe it really is all about some kind of a military action out of need, their need in their eyes. And with that, I will tell you that you can decide on your own, right? But I can also tell you that almost all of the media, including the so-called conservative media, conservative people, are just turning into mush. I mean, it seems like they all just kind of took their brain out of their skull and put it on the shelf somewhere and then just start blabbering. And they're saying things that are simply not true. And why is that? I don't know. Maybe they think they can deny reality because it's not fun to be losing or to feel impotent when you see the advances of Russia. They look down on Russia. They underestimate Russia. That's a mistake. Never underestimate your enemy. They underestimated President Trump also, seeing him as the enemy. And so they couldn't impeach him. I mean, they tried, but they failed. And the Russia hoax didn't work. And they also tried to prevent him from becoming president. And so finally they went all out to make sure that he did not return to the White House. But in doing that, they revealed the truth of everything, which is that they've become the fascists. And so our nation right now is ruled by fascists that are fringe. They don't represent the majority of the American people. The majority of the American people really want the border secured. They don't want inflation. They don't want soaring gas prices. And they don't want their tax dollars to go to some overseas countries that nobody cares about, no matter how much the media tries to make you care about it, with the yellow and blue and the sunflowers. And, it's the same old. And you saw the pivot, right? Suddenly the pandemic ended. Wow. Putin actually cured the Rona. Or he's kind of like the amazing vaccine. And suddenly now it's about war. And at some point in the future, the war will suddenly not be a talking point, and it'll be about climate change again. Or maybe a new pandemic, right? And it really does seem like they're trying to scare people, whether it's about nukes or chemical weapons that Putin is about to use. Everything they say almost is designed to install fear in people. And the media, of course, they pump it into you that you're supposed to be scared. The Rona, war, chemical warfare, nuclear war, be afraid. And then they can do what they want. And what they want is fascism, a new global, worldwide fascist system. And we're going to be the slaves. Yeah. You, I, everybody. And that is the future they dream about. It's a nightmare. But of course, I know that they will fail. Because in the end, fascism, National Socialism, these empires, alliances, it never ends up working. All they do is just kind of kill millions of people. And for what? And so we're seeing the beginnings of that. And so everybody that stands up against the expansion of the EU and NATO is in fact making sure that we don't enter into World War III. And if Russia, does some military action to Ukraine, who the hell cares, right? It's their backyard, not our backyard. We're not Europeans. We're not Ukrainians. And China Joe is not the president of Ukraine. Somebody should tell him that.